Kyrie Irving is going to be an MVP candidate. Ben Simmons is going to be an all-star. And the Brooklyn Nets are going to the NBA Finals.
You serious?
I think he can be MVP. Also, Finals MVP. Whatever he puts his mind to, he can do it.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
The Brooklyn Nets over the past 2 years have been the most hyped up team in the NBA, despite only winning one playoff series. And during that time period, we've seen their team have 1,000 different lineups, make numerous trades, and pick up every washed veteran through free agency. All those moves, all those trades and lineups have resulted in zero real success. And despite all that turmoil, all that uncertainty, you still have people in the NBA media who have blind faith in this team to win a championship. And quite frankly, at this point, I don't understand it. Maybe when they had James Harden and a legit big three, but now with Ben Simmons, how can anyone possibly believe this team is a championship caliber squad? And looking at their best player in their first option, that is still by far Kevin Durant, who at this point is 34 years old and still a top 5 player. And I have no doubt this season KD will have a great individual year, average 28-29 points per game, and have impressive stats. But taking age into account, the wear and tear on his body, the injuries, and the fact that over the past 2 years, he's only played 58% of his team's games, I don't see KD at this point leading his team to a championship. Also throughout last year versus Boston, the recipe on KD was kind of exposed, and the blueprint to shut him down is finally out there. Now, looking at Kyrie Irving, the second option, he isn't much better when it comes to being available and healthy for his team, as over the last 8 years, he's played 70 plus games only once. And since being traded from Cleveland, Kyrie in the playoffs is an average player at best, only averaging 22 points and winning one playoff series. And the most damning fact of all, since coming to Brooklyn, he's played 10 straight games only once. That was in his first year with Brooklyn, when to start the year, he played 11 games, but then missed a month with an ankle injury. Looking at Brooklyn's top 2 players, they are by far the most injury-prone duo of all time. And last but not least, the third option is Ben quadruple single Simmons. Quite possibly the only guy in the NBA who's more of an enigma than Kyrie Irving. And the one thing Simmons, Kyrie, and KD all have in common, when it comes to being on the court and available, all of them are question marks. And for Ben Simmons, after missing all last year, who has any idea what he's capable of this season? As from what I've seen, running a weird point center, point forward is an awful look in Brooklyn, and quite frankly, doesn't fit their offense. And for Simmons at this point, his overall headache he brings on offense outweighs his actual game and he brings on defense. And I truly believe this guy, after the Atlanta series, he's mentally broken and a shell of himself. As that one play versus Atlanta encapsulated who Ben Simmons was, and it going viral as a meme devastated him beyond belief. Simmons back in 2017-2018, he was getting legit comparisons to Magic Johnson. I am not joking when I say this, we are not far removed from Ben Simmons being compared to the greatest point guard in NBA history. And now in 2023, he's nothing more than a discount Walmart version of Lamar Odom. And when it comes to Stephen A. Smith, him picking Brooklyn to win the championship, I have no idea where this is coming from. As for Stephen A. to say this, it's out of left field and extremely odd. As looking at Brooklyn this year, according to the odds makers, they have the third highest odds to win the championship. It really does boggle the mind how Brooklyn has this undeserved respect from fans and media members like they've done something in the past decade. The Brooklyn Nets at this point have had 2 failed super teams and are part of some of the worst trades in NBA history. So once again I ask, why did this team get respect and always get the benefit of the doubt? And looking across the Eastern Conference, when it comes to championship contenders, I've got at least 4 teams definitively ahead of Brooklyn. In Tier 1, you have Boston and Milwaukee, deep teams that are championship proven and have very effective big threes. In Tier 2, you have Philly and Miami, also very experienced teams that are deep. And in Tier 3, Cleveland, Toronto, Atlanta, teams that are young and hungry and looking to prove themselves this year. If you told me Brooklyn was the 7th seed in the East, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest, as basketball is a 5v5 game, not 1v1 or even 2v2. If it was, KD and Kyrie easily win the conference finals and would make a deep playoff run. But unfortunately for them, looking past their third option, it gets really weak really fast. And across their roster, they have no consistent playoff performers, no good defensive weapons, and their knockdown snipers at this point are injured and banged up. So looking at someone like Chris Broussard, Stephen A. Smith, when they pick Brooklyn to make the finals, I have a tiny feeling it's for clicks and ratings, and if so, it worked beautifully. But if it isn't, I am dumbfounded by the blind faith in 3 All-Stars who are never healthy. And speaking of All-Stars, one of Stephen A. Smith's big brain takes was saying Ben Simmons returned to All-Star form. I don't know how he topped his Brooklyn championship take, but somehow he did it in the exact same sentence. And to show you guys why this take is so crazy, look at the Eastern Conference, their stacked guards, and their potential All-Stars this year. You have Trae Young, Donovan Mitchell, Zach LaVine, Kyrie himself, Jaylen Brown, Bradley Beal, James Harden, Darius Garland, DeJounte Murray, LaMelo, Jrue Holiday, and Fred VanVleet. That is 12 guards from the Eastern Conference who are former All-Stars and have great potential to make the game this year. Comparing Ben Simmons to all those guys, I don't think one player on that list is worse than Simmons. And when it comes to Brooklyn being a 5-7 seed, there is no way that team gets 3 All-Stars on a mediocre team in the Eastern Conference. If you're gonna pick Mr. Quadruple Single, go ahead and do it, but I highly advise against it, as him making the All-Star game is nearly impossible. And last but not least, when it comes to Stephen A. Smith and his Brooklyn Nets takes, his third one was saying Kyrie will be an MVP candidate. Now let's get one thing straight, Kyrie Irving is a great NBA player and quite possibly the most skilled point guard we've ever seen. Now with that being said, him being the MVP has never once been in the realm of possibility. As looking at Kyrie's career, he has 0 top 10 MVP finishes, 0 first place votes, 0 top 5 finishes, and 0 votes for being top 10 in Brooklyn alone. To put it into perspective, Ben Simmons in 2021 alone had more MVP votes than Kyrie's ever gotten. Now, taking one more look at this, obviously Kyrie is the second best player on his own team. So with that in mind, has there ever been an MVP who isn't the best player on his own team? Now, also equally as rare is having 2 players in the top 5 when it comes to MVP finishes. Looking at the last 10 years, you have LeBron Anthony Davis, Curry and KD, and Westbrook and KD. You know what those 3 duos had in common? All of them were at worst top 3 teams in the NBA. Something Brooklyn this year, without a doubt, will not be. And what I think Stephen A is doing, in a very roundabout way, is giving Kyrie overdue praise, so when he fails, he can look back on it and say, I had these high expectations that you did not meet. Now, as you guys know when it comes to Stephen A. Smith, I'm not a big fan of him. I think he's a goofball, a clown, and I think most of his takes are due for narrative as well as shock value. But when it comes to his Brooklyn take, if he's actually serious, this take right here is gonna age like milk and be one of his worst of all time. As when it comes to KD and Kyrie, they're gonna get their numbers, but Brooklyn's overall team is gonna fail and go down in flames once again. And looking at Ben Simmons, he might average 10 points per game and foul out of at least 50 games. as so far what I've seen, he's a shell of himself and not even close to being all-star player. And if it wasn't clear enough, I have zero faith in the Eastern Conference Clippers. As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time.